everyone, Angela here. Life can be challenging. Trust me, I get it. However, I have learned we can either view the opposition or value the opportunity. Ponder on the problem or praise the potential. Focus on the situation or find the solution. Despite the current circumstances you're going through, I invite you to join me today as we embark on a grand adventure to discover the reasons why it's a good time to be you.
Here's the encourager herself, making every day a good day, Angela Henderson.
Welcome, everyone. We are so glad that you're with us today. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's a good time to be you. And it is. Thank you for being with us today. We have an amazing show to share with you. A story of a couple, Nina and Treg Monty, and how they began to dabble a little bit in the occult and just seeking and searching. You know, we were designed to have relationship. We were designed to have relationship with our Creator. There's a spot inside of our hearts that only He can fill. And sometimes when we go to try to fill that spot, we may go into other things, and it may take us off the path that He originally designed for us. And maybe we begin to dabble in some things that are on the darker side of our spirituality. However, nothing in our lives happens that's just happenstance. God has ordained everything. It might not always be good, but He said He'll make it good. And so we're going to hear Treg and Nina's story today as they went on that path. But yet, even sometimes when they were being in defiance or maybe operating in disbelief, the love of God wooed them into a right relationship with Him as well as with each other. So don't go away. We'll be right back with an amazing story for you. You have a remarkable story with an extraordinary outcome. Well, if you do, I'd love to invite you to submit that to us at it'sagoodtimetobeYou@gmail.com. We would love to review it for consideration. And who knows, you might just find yourself on our show. So enjoy the rest of your day, and remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. Now, let's welcome our friends, Treg and Nina Monty, to the stage. Come on out, Treg and Nina. Woo! Welcome. So glad you're here. Thank you for being with us today. There you go. Have a seat. Welcome. It's a good time to be you. So I am super excited to have you guys with us today and to be able to share your story. Even our story and how we met was kind of interesting. And so, and Treg, you've started out with us with It's a Good Time to Be You way back when we first got started and just helping us with our ideas and brainstorming. So it's an honor to have you folks with us today on the stage. And so why don't we just start with just a little bit of background about you guys, if you don't mind. I know a little bit about you, but I know I'm going to learn a lot more today as our friends are learning. So how did you guys meet?
Well, we met in 1992 through work. We had kind of worked around each other, but there's a corporate merger, and I was told that this was somebody I had to use as a vendor, and I kept putting off connecting with him because I'm like, oh, he's got to be some old, knowing this company. No, thanks.
I was.
He was. But I got called to a meeting and walked in, and there he was. And I'm like, I guess I'm meeting him today. Yeah. But it was more coming out of that meeting. It was just we worked together for a couple years before we ever started together. Oh. But the poignant thing of walking out of that meeting, I was walking back to my office, and I said out loud, which weird, is we're going to create great things together.
Wow.
And it wasn't romantic. It wasn't work-wise. It wasn't. But I say it, and I say it now, and I'm still back in that moment. So, and I don't think it was just we that were going to create great things together, although I didn't know it at the time.
So what was life like for you guys at the beginning then? You know, you talked about your work relationship, but I mean, obviously you got married, so what was it like?
We got married eventually. We lived a life very worldly, you know. At that time of my life, I was into other things. I did not believe in Jesus Christ, but I believed in God.
All right.
Very interesting dynamic, and that's not part of our. It wasn't part of our world. I'll let you speak into that. So.
Yeah, I think that sometimes you get off track, or at least you think you're on the right track.
You thought we were.
And I always felt Nina was very spiritual as an individual. I admired that, really.
Right.
So, you know, it's a fine line between spiritual, it's real, or the wrong path and the right path. So it was interesting.
That's true. You know, the spirituality is attractive, and it does draw attention. Again, because we are a three-part being. We are body, we are soul, and we are spirit. And so that spirit is really what is coming alive, or it's either dying, based on our emotions and based on then what our body is also doing at that time. But people are always drawn to spiritual things, whether it's in the light or whether it's in the darkness. And so with that being said, Treg, you mentioned, Nina, that you did not grow up believing in Jesus Christ. But what about you, Treg?
Well, I kind of have a different story there, because in high school, well, probably junior high, I got involved with a local church in Massachusetts. And there was a youth group there, and so I became knowledgeable about accepting Christ and about being within that environment at an fairly early age, and which I was for a while. And until the pastor of the church during the mid-high school years made a very interesting decision on a youth leader at the time, a youth group leader, and fired him because he got a divorce. None of the kids understood that, and because we loved this guy, and we felt he was just being punished, you know. And so it seemed like all the kids at that time just drifted away. So for many years, even though I had that in me, I just didn't understand it, didn't acknowledge it. It didn't stay with me. And I looked at that as the turning point and said, well, if that's what this is about, there's better things I can be doing, you know.
Disillusionment and disenchantment kind of kicked in, I understand that. Well, when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit more about Treg and Nina's story. It's very interesting. I know you'll be able to relate to a lot of this, so don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We have with us today Treg and Nina Monty that are sharing their story of just a state of rebellion, you know, going in search of something that they probably already had to begin with, and but then walked away and going into a path of darkness, but led them back to light. And so right before we took the break, we kind of established a little bit of your background. But so share with us now, Nina, what made you resist Christianity?
I was raised Catholic, Angela, and there's a lot of rigidity and rules and religion in that. And I didn't know about relationship. I knew the rules. And so growing up, I think, I can't tell you a moment that I just said, I'm going to rebel and going to go off and do my thing. But there was things in me that weren't being fed, and I just was at an unease. And so as I grew and came into things of the occult, like tarot cards, astrology, it was like, this makes sense. This is, it was using my natural gifts and talents. And as I have come on this side of the cross to look back on it, I don't think I had the mentors, that my gifts were in me from a very young age, but into a environment that didn't accept them as because it was against the rules. Only priests could do that. Only authorized people. And who do you think you are? Is a word that the enemy has spoken over my life that I broke off, on this journey. So I think it was, the enemy will counterfeit the truth. He'll come after our errors of anointing. And I think that's what he did. And I also think God let me go in there for training.
I believe that too, Nina. You know, it's so interesting. Religion does not fulfill us. And so there are gaps that are there because rules and laws and regulations, I mean, even mankind, the children of Israel couldn't keep it, I mean, they tried, and that's why Jesus had to come for us, and to redeem us. And I remember growing up very legalistically in religion. And I recall I could tell you everything I didn't believe in, but I couldn't tell you anything I did believe in. So I knew the don'ts of our religion and our faith, so to speak, at that time. And so for me, I was vacillating. I felt like you could either serve God and be miserable or enjoy your life and go to hell. And I was just really weighing my options there, I didn't realize you could, serve God and enjoy your life and have fulfillment. In life. And so I'm so sorry that happened to you, but I can see the fruit of that. You are very prophetic, and I know that God has allowed you, to walk through those experiences. So Treg, at the time, when she was using her gifts in a different light, or in darkness rather. What was your experience? How did you feel about that?
Well, I always felt that she was spiritual, as I mentioned earlier, and she wasn't sacrificing like puppies in the deep woods. There wasn't crazy things like that happening.
Or dancing around the
My tarot
campfires.
cards were the most Christian ones out on the market. Come on.
Well, she came at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
And I think there's a tendency, though, because it's on the fine line of, if you go to a card reader or somebody like that, and we've all at some point done it or thought about it or seen it. You don't go there you never really get an answer. You get something they might say that's maybe happened to you, but you don't get a thoughtful,
Yes.
deep answer about what you should be thinking about as you go forward.
Right.
It's always something maybe in the past. So I think that the danger is you're looking at the wrong place for the incorrect answers. You don't have the true answer. And, I think as men, we have to be careful because let's go back to Adam and Eve. So you got Adam and Eve's there, with nothing on, and she's eating an apple. And she says, try this. And he might have known it was not really the thing to do, but the guy's caught up in the moment, right?
Yeah.
So he's not thinking correctly. I think the problem is as men, sometimes we go along with the show because it seems okay,
Yeah.
but it's probably the most dangerous decision we make.
Yes.
And I think I never looked at it as being dangerous.
Right.
I thought, well, she's doing this in a spiritual nature, but it was
Right.
completely.
And that's the danger of counterfeit. And the enemy has
Yes.
counterfeited the truth. And not to correct Trig, but there's been many
No,
times
you can do that.
in the psychic parties, or I've thrown tarot cards, and I would tell you what's going to happen. As I've come to learn, because that was how he helped me. It's like I'm helping people. I saw it as counseling.
Yeah.
I saw it as using my gifts and my care of people. And I'm not
Yeah.
kidding when I said my tarot cards are the most Christian. Yoga. He used yoga to help me into forgiveness. That is not a Christian thing at all. But the enemy has counterfeited out, and I believe it's time for us to go back into the enemy's camp and take back what God ordained. That's what he's. And I railed like, Lord, why can't I be more psychic? Why can't I? Why do I have to use my book to do the tarot cards? Why can't I? And it was his protection. My first real vision was in prayer when I saw him write my name in his book. And for years I had just railed against God, saying, why? Because I prayed to God. I prayed to God all the time. I believed in God, to know him, to love him, to serve him. I didn't believe in hell, and I didn't believe in Jesus, because I believed those were created to control and manipulate me.
Wow.
So that's where I went off track.
Yes.
Not by anyone's fault, but it's where the enemy's hooks got me. And I didn't have people who understood the spiritual warfare. And I think
Yes.
that's the biggest danger in our world today,
Yes.
is that there's spiritual warfare. It's not something scary or
Yes.
something of the devil. It's real. And if we can train up our children to know how to do battle, they won't get caught in the snare set for them.
Wow. Well, when we come back, we're going to find out what happened to shift Nina's belief and Trag. So don't go away. We'll be back in a moment. Hey, as a leader, you are a broker of gifts. So whether you are a professional, a business owner, or a ministerial leader, I would love to accompany you in transforming your ordinary staff into an extraordinary team through leadership development, team building, and personal discovery. You will learn the amazing gifts, skills, and talents that each of you have and know how to bring them together in order to do great things. So reach out to me at AngelaDHenderson.com and let's begin your amazing adventure today. And remember, it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We have with us today our friends Treg and Nina Monty, and they're just sharing with us their journey and their adventure from the dark side into the side of light. And so as we were leaving, we were talking about a shift that took place in your belief system. So what was that had you shift into believing more in this Jesus, that you were just determined, he was not real because he was just made up to make your life miserable?
Well, to control me.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't think one thing, Andrew. I think it's a groundswell is the word I'm going to use, because it's a picture he showed me a long time ago. That Jesus was always coming for me, the hero I've been searching for my whole life, in men, in alcohol, in tarot, in astrology, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It was him. And he just kept coming. He just kept coming, and he kept offering his hand. And, I could give you lots of little episodes, but, our life kind of blew up on us. The psychic predicted it, but we didn't believe it. But we ended up moving down here to South Carolina in 2004, and we left everything and everyone. And that really shook the foundation enough to say, well, what? And this burning fire of, you need to get to a church. Okay. Well, we went to a church in the household. Yay. But there was more to it than that. And
just to hit on that point, the psychic predicted it. That's true. They predict a lot of things, but they don't give you the answer to how to deal with those things.
Yeah.
So you find yourself in a mess. And they were right, but if they could have given you some way to think differently before that or while it happened, then you're in a better position. Well, that's not what they're, and that's exactly right.
And so it was through, I guess if I had God, what I want to really drive home is that God uses everything.
Yeah.
He used every bit of the occult to point to him if we have eyes to see.
Yes.
And on the break, we were talking about your daughter's books.
Yes.
And I'm editing a couple books as well. They're fiction and they're real, but God's in it.
Yes.
And when you have eyes to see the truth, you're going to see them. And he needs to have tools to get into the world. But it was our financial bankruptcy and ruin that ended us up in a financial peace class that he led us to. And randomly, because Dave Ramsey and whatnot, which led us to a church. And I actually was talking to the worship leader at the first time we went to that church, and I was asking him pointedly, obviously not pointedly because he didn't understand what I was really saying, can I still believe in past lives? Can I still believe in my tarot? Can I still believe in that and come to this church? And however I asked it, what he heard is, are you accepting? And he said yes.
Huh.
But I heard him say, yes, we'll accept you. And that was just the door.
Yeah.
And we walked through, and it was there that we met Jesus.
Wow.
And it was going through prayer, breaking off all of the occult, doing all those things. I know we were going to talk about that, but it was just once we were in, and I started asking questions, well, why is it wrong? And they were able to, good Christian, solid, rooted in Christ people were able to say, well, you're not bad. But here's the counterfeit. They were able to explain that made sense.
Yes.
There's like purity, even having sex before marriage. That was just a don't do it. It's a sin.
Yeah.
As opposed to this is what you miss out. Yeah. This is how you tarnish the blessing. Oh, that makes sense. I can get what makes sense. Just don't tell me no. Explain to me why. And they were able to do that. And as I said, I had those prayer sessions where we did prayer healing.
Yes.
And in the very first one, I saw the Lord write my name in his book and my family's. And continually, it was the going after. I went after it. Just like the enemy knew that I am all in, I was all into that stuff. But when Jesus started getting my attention, I came in all here. And before we even gave our lives to the Lord, we used to do Hindu practices and chanting and all that business. Wow. And one night we had put the girls to bed, and I was upstairs, and I just had this overwhelming hurt in every bit of my being, get it out of the house.
Wow.
I knew exactly what was being referred to.
Yes.
I went downstairs and opened this curio cabinet, took out this little 3x5 frame, handed it to him on the couch and said, get this out of the house. He stood up. We walked out back. He fired it off the deck, and it was a little tiny piece of glass.
Yeah.
It hit a tree, and the explosion was so loud. Trey and I hit the ground
wow.
Waiting for sirens, waiting for neighbors, waiting for something.
Goodness.
But it wasn't. It wasn't a real explosion, but we heard it in the supernatural, and from there it just fell out. I was in the garage working, listening to McDowell, what's his name, Josh McDowell? Yeah. Working, shipping, packaging, and I just gave my life to the Lord and said, okay, why not? But it's just been the journey.
Yes.
And it's been the journey. And as the more I've sought him, the more I've encountered him. And I encountered him face to face one day in a prayer time, a sozo. And that was probably the biggest moment.
Haven't looked back, huh?
Well, it's been a journey, though.
I hear you.
It's been a journey.
It's amazing how the one that you didn't believe in believed in you.
Yeah.
And he never stopped loving you, and he never stopped pursuing you. How beautiful that is. Yes. And Treg, what about you? Whenever you heard that explosion too, what was, your take on that?
I did hear it, and it's one of those, as Neen said, it's a supernatural event, and it's pretty incredible. But and when she got when she got into Jesus for the first time, I was kind of re-entering that that whole concept again based on my previous experience in high school. So it took me a little while to warm up to that. You know, she would go to all these
He's
meetings
bad.
and groups, and I said, "You're going to go with the church people again?" I can't be with those church people. And it was really, so
You
it
go
took a
spend time in
while.
that book and not with me. I'm like, yep.
Yeah, I felt it was all coming back, this horror show of what it was all about, right? And one night we went up to the Tides, the big condos down by the bridge, you know, and there was a church group meeting again about studying your life. You know, that's the last thing I wanted to do was study my life. I didn't want to think about it. So we got up to the top of the penthouse, and there was about 16 people, 8 couples, and this was like a 3-day thing, and we had to go every night, and I didn't want to be there. Well, the last thing they had, the last day, they said, "Okay, now I want you to go privately someplace in this big deal up there, sit alone, and write down what you got out of this, where you were when you came in and where you are now." I had thought I got nothing out of this, right? I was angry, really. I was angry at having to be there. And I sat out on the cold, windy penthouse deck. It was at the top floor of the buildings, and it was probably about 40 degrees with the wind chill that night. And I started to write 3 times, and I stopped because I was just going to put down some stuff that didn't mean anything. And the 3rd time I started writing, and I wrote 3 pages that just flowed. And when I walked into the room again, I was so at peace and so filled with the Spirit, really, that I think noticed. I think maybe everybody noticed because they knew this guy didn't want to be here, and that got me back. It was a transformation.
Yeah.
It just happens, just like that.
Amazing. Well, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to finish hearing a little bit more of this journey, as I shared earlier about Treg and Nina. And when I mentioned you hadn't looked back, Nina stressed it was a journey. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that. Don't go away. Check out my new book on AngelaDHenderson.com and take a journey to discover the many reasons why it's a good time to be you. Welcome back, everyone. We're so glad you're with us. We are here wrapping up our amazing interview with Treg and Nina Monte as they are sharing with us. So tell us, what was the journey like then? Was this just an immediate toss out everything and we're just going to start with the slate clean? Or what was this journey into discovering Jesus as the lover of your soul?
It was a relentless pursuit. It was a decision that I'm going to go after you no matter what. Yeah. It was a continued time of pressing in, but we still were going through bankruptcy. We almost lost our house in foreclosure. Yeah. We had to go get jobs, totally new fields, and recreate ourselves in our 50s. Wow. We watched our mothers die. We saw Jesus in the midst of all of that.
Amazing.
And we kept pressing in. He gave me this scripture this morning.
I love it.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to do the phone, but I brought it because I didn't want to be
we're eager to hear. Yes.
But he tells us this. Isaiah is one of my favorite books. And for the sake of my servant Jacob and Israel, my chosen, I call you by your name and give you a title of honor, but you don't even know me. I am Yahweh, the only God there is, and you'll never find another. I will strengthen you for victory, even though you do not intimately know who I am. Yet through you, everyone will know who I really am. And that's really what he speaks to me as what this is about. He's given me the promise of our family as a ministry. I've only wanted to be wife and mother. And his life has come at me in different ways, and I've gone against him. He's put me into the arena with Jezebel, which he didn't put me there, but he allowed me to go through it and was with me in the midst of it. And I realized what I was battling. It's like, whoa, this is so much bigger. Everything's been a stepping stone to grow closer to him. And he's pursued, and he showed up. And he continuously, the more I press into him, and even in my most rock bottom, being here, he brought you to me on Facebook randomly. I mean, we didn't even know this church existed. And here we are, I think almost 4 years later.
Well, there was a massive point of shedding some of this stuff. Yes. And Nina had a library. It was like the Library of Congress with occult books. Wow. I mean,
Wiccan. We did Wiccan ritual.
Wow.
You name it, we did it.
Well, I didn't know.
But not sacrifice.
I didn't know what it was, Angela. But his
Adam here.
But we had good, and even you get filled with, Jesus's love and the Spirit, and but even with that, you need people to come alongside you. We had some very close friends at the time who have moved away, but they came over one night and they said, "What are you going to do with all these books?" They knew the transition, of Nina's books there, and she said, "I don't know. I'm just going to donate them." She said, "No, you can't do that.
Oh.
We don't want to give this to other people."
Yes.
And it was a pretty drastic measure, but we went out in the backyard and we had a fire pit, and we took every single one of
We
those.
had 4 different fire pits
books.
for occasion of our,
And we had
because we couldn't. The Holy Spirit said, no, this has to be
We
destroyed.
had a complete bonfire.
But we also needed the covering of our authority. They were church leaders,
Yeah.
and they had been the ones to open our eyes of the counterfeit and that it's not wrong,
Beautiful.
and just that piece of it. But ridding ourselves, you have to do the work. You can't just say, hey, we were baptized again last night with the church as a full immersion because it's something that the Lord had put on my heart to do, to just wash clean, to go into death and wash clean. But it's not magic. There's still that pursuing of spending time with Him, hearing Him, and then obedience. It's radical obedience and relentless faith. It's making that choice that keeps us in. And even in the darkest days, and they come.
Yes.
Less than a month ago, I was in despair, like nothing's changing. Who wants to hear this testimony? And I crawled in here, the church on a Sunday, after reaching out to the woman in our group and just sharing, hey, I'm having a tough time. And that instantly breaks the hold the enemy has. It's just that community with true believers, accountability, and authentically just going after the truth and not being complacent. That's the journey, I think.
Yes.
I think a lot of people, and including myself, say if we believe in God and we believe in Jesus, it's too much. I can't do it. It's too much. Asking too much. It's too expensive. You're devoting too much. So I kind of relate it to when you have a problem with your automobile that has a lot of electronics in it. So you're having a problem, you can't fix it because the local guy, you go to a local guy, he's cheap, or he's cheaper than the dealership, right? And they don't have the right codes for the computer. So you're forced to go to the dealership, the creator of that machine, to plug in properly.
Yes.
And it costs you some money, but the car's fixed.
Yes.
So it's kind of the way it works. You kind of avoid it because of that expense and the time and the effort. But you realize that's the only place you can really get the true fix,
Absolutely. Well, I see the whole foundation of this is just based on love. The love that Christ had for each one of you and the relentless pursuit that He made in order to gain your affections and get your attention, that you in turn would pursue Him and follow the path He laid for you. And we are so excited that He's done that. So when did you realize it was a good time to be you?
Probably right now.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, how about at the count of 3, we let them know out there it's a good time to be you. 1, 2, 3. It's a good time to be you.